Yes, Dr. Shakil, how are you? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. ثم ما بعد, webinar in basic of research methodology. So this short course, one day, under service of biostatistician. So this is will be presented by College of Medicine, Majmaah University. So we'll start our talk with the presentation in next 20 minutes about the gateway to research. Dr. Muhammad Shaki Ahmed is Assistant Professor in Community Medicine Department, College of Medicine, Majmaah University. So we'll start in 20 minutes, then we'll receive 10 minutes for a question. So Dr. Muhammad Shaki, can you start your presentation?
Thank you, Dr. Abdul Malik. That was a quite good introduction for me. Thank you so much. First of all, I invite all my students or faculty members from different parts of the globe. I see a lot of people from here today. So I welcome all, and without wasting any time, inshallah, we should start off with the webinar because the time is very short. And as we all know that this presentation that we have today, it's basically talking on we have a schedule. We have all the presenters today in front of you. The starting presentation will be by me, and it will continue by Dr. Riaz, and then we have the rest of the presenters. So the reason why I'm talking about is the gateway to research is the first thing that comes into your mind. We start off or when we plan off a research. So the first thing that comes into your mind is research important? How is research important in the field of medicine? That's where we all are. And how does it help us to enhance or to progress into the academics that we are looking for? So to introduce what exactly is the research or what is its importance, I would start off with the research is an invaluable tool for building on a, we can begin to understand the complexity of its various issues. We have many issues, when we build up a research plan, and this continues till the time your research is getting published. So we have different presenters who will take you into the different aspects and the pros and the cons of doing research, and don't take research as for granted, because it's not an easy job. But we always try to make sure that it's right now, or the participants right now who are in the initial stage of their career, or they are pursuing into what they want to learn in research. So this is basically an indication to those people who are with us today. It is to approve the lies and uphold the importance truth. So here we have something like we maximum into our plan. So that is very important, but make sure that it is practiced in a very ethical way. So we have one particular slide in the end of the session for my part, where I'm going to explain to serve the seed of analyzing the convoluted set of data as well. So that would be also included in our presentation. So how do I define research? There are many ways. There are many ways that we have defined or we have understood. For an example, that I can give the best thing that I understand about research is basically that it upholds. Research is defined as a careful consideration of a study. It's regarding a particular concern or a problem using scientific methods in a day-to-day life. And according to the academic sociologist Robert Irby, which he himself was a great researcher, research is a systemic inquiry to describe, explain, predict, and control the observed phenomena. So there are many things which you get involved into while you're preparing for your research. And the basic research. So here we are right now, where we need to understand what is the basic research. So here we have the basic research is a systemic study directed towards the great knowledge of understanding of the fundamental aspects of phenomena and of an observable facts without specific application towards the process or the products in our mind. When we say the application towards the process or products in our mind, is because how does this first thing that comes into our mind, a question that arises into our mind before we start a particular research, and it's any other research that I'm talking about. It's a vast research itself is a very vast kind of a phenomena. So the most important aspects of research. This is basic information about any research. So in my opinion, and in the name of the originality, the relevance, and the creation of a new knowledge. So these are the basic three informations that we need to uphold and continue with it throughout our research, the research path that we follow. Originality, why? Because obviously in a particular thing different which has already been performed before. I mean, it's nothing. I mean, sometimes we say like, oh, this particular research was already been conducted at a particular place. So why are we doing it here? Yes, we can, because we have different aspects into it. We have different, for example, we have like for a different complete surrounding or a complete demographic setup, which is different from this. Then about the relevance, how relevant is it? Or you should say, how feasible is my particular research? Creation of a new idea or a new knowledge that we are talking about. So what is the basic aims of research? We have experiments performed to further scientific knowledge without any obvious or an immediate benefit. The goal of a basic research is to understand the functions of newly discovered molecules and cells, strange phenomena, or a little understood process. The characteristics of a research is as follows. Research is a reflexive and a self-critical. The systemic process of collecting, analyzing information. This is basically based on the data that we collect during the process of the research. Research is systematic, and we are executing a particular plan on the right pathway. Research is repeatable, and research is planned orderly. Yes, that is why, my second part of this presentation today by Dr. Riaz is about how do we prepare a proposal. That's how we start, because we have an idea, and we put that idea into black and white, where we prepare a proposal, and then we make sure that is very important. So here we have the 6 steps of research. So how do I say the 6 steps of research? This is, again, it's talking about the basic research that we need to understand. So it's first of identifying the area of the study. So what do? We select a particular area that we need to do our study in, choosing the topic. So I would again see into this that I have a proper topic. I select a topic that is very feasible for my particular study, because I have to look into many aspects when I'm preparing a topic. I have to make sure, or it should be very appropriate for that particular demographic that I'm going to study in. Then formulating a research plan. As I said, you need to plan out each section of your research. So how do we do that? Again, we will have this in the later on in our proposal, that how do we plan our research, whereas few are very long also. I mean, it can go in years, few of the research studies. So then comes the collection of the data. How do you collect your data? So there is a systematic procedure in how do you collect your data. You have a proper identification of who will be participating in your particular study. And then once this whole data is collected, it has to be properly entered, and then we sit for the analysis. This is a very critical part, and Dr. Waqas, he's our on the how the data are analyzed and what are the critical situations in doing this process. And the end, that is not completing the whole thing. I will not call it an end, because I always feel a research is an incomplete research unless and until it is shared with the rest of the population or with the rest of the researchers, as you say. So the first part I'm going to pick up tonight is I need to have, because the most important thing about a research individually, that's what I feel, it's about a teamwork. Research is not an individual job. It needs to have a good team with the same kind of mind setup and the cooperation and the interactions between all the researchers. So first thing would be the brainstorming of an idea. So you bring a topic, and then you start discussing over it. What are the pros and what are the cons on this particular ideas that you need to know. Then choose a topic that will enable you to read and understand the literature. When I say read and understand the literature, means you need to refer back to the similar kind of studies which have been done at other areas or other places or other continents of this particular globe. Ensure that the topic is manageable. I would suggest you to make it feasible. Rather, we need to understand that whenever I say the word feasible in research, it's looking at the demography of your research. So I need to find out, like, for example, I cannot do a research with an inclusion of doing an investigation. And then I realize it later on that I don't have a backup of a lab where I need to do the investigation. When you want to conduct or when you want to draw the plan, you need to make sure that you have those facilities, and you need to make sure that these are basically the things or the equipments or the population that you need to involve in your research. Make a list of keywords. So the important words have to be noted down, and then they need to be highlighted before you start it. And you, when I say the word flexible, is basically if something is not working right for you, you need to have that extra space where you can make those changes, and it does not make any difficulty in that. Define your topic as a focused research question, definitely, because unless and until you design a research question, you cannot design your proposal. And then we have the research and read more about the topics. We always keep on reading different materials from different journals related to the same topic that we are going to move forward. Research methods. These are basically, few of us all have this information, that it's experiments, the surveys, it's in the form of questionnaires, interviews, we have case studies, participants and non-participant observational trials, studies using the Delphi method. These are basically the different ways or the different types of research that we have. Two main types that we keep on talking about, or we keep on conducting, is the qualitative. I'm going to explain you in my later slides how do I differentiate between the qualitative research and the quantitative research. In a qualitative research is more of a descriptive in nature, because it generally deals with the non-numerical, unquantifiable things. And in a quantitative research is a research strategy that focuses on the quantifying, the collection, and these are the two basic things that you need to uphold while conducting your research. Here you can look into the first part is the objective, or you can call it the purpose of your research. So how do I plan quantitative way? In qualitative way, it is to basically to gain and understand the underlying reasons or the motivations. Here we have to differentiate between you have to give it a very strong reasoning, and it basically is to uncover the prevalent trends throughout the options. Whereas in a quantitative way, we need to quantify the data and generalize the result from a sample to measure the incidence of various views and options in a chosen sample. Then we come to the next part, that is the sample. So we need to have two different types of sample. It is usually a small in number in a qualitative research. Data is large, the sample size is big, and it's basically designed and it's calculated according to the subjects that you're looking into. Then comes how do we do it in the data collection. In a qualitative data, such as an open-ended responses, we do it in the form of interviews, observational, and as field notes. Whereas in a quantitative data, it's based on a precise measurement using structures and validated data collection instruments. You also be explained later in this webinar today. What do you mean by the validated data by Dr. Waqas when he's explaining you the analysis. When we come to data analysis, we need to identify the patterns, the future, the themes in a qualitative data, whereas in a quantitative data, we need to identify in a statistical relationships. The outcome, obviously, it has to be different from each other. So here we have a narrative report with a conceptual description and a direct correlations. It's basically upon the report of the statistical correlations, comparisons and means of statistical significance of the finding. How do you do the test of significance? That's also been explained today in this webinar, inshallah. Here you look into qualitative research. If you want to go more into details, so you need to understand that here we are talking, how do I look into and how do I think deep into this qualitative research? It's an experimental, or you can also call it a non-experimental. So you need to know which one is it before you need to also know where the control groups where it was included, and were participating in we are part of we were control groups where we are included. Here we need to understand that where these participants randomly assigned. So these are all included in the basically in the designing part or in the methodological part. where the attempts made to control for the extraneous variables. So these are again designed for your particular research. How were the participants selected, and were the techniques used to reduce the effects of the bias? So this is basically an overall view of how do you design your particular methods of conducting this particular research. We have a difference again between the qualitative research and the quantitative research, and you can see here that we have different types that is study research. We have the record keeping, we have the process of observation, we have the ethnonomical research and the focus group research, and on one-to-one interview kind of a research. So these are all the qualitative kind of a research. Whereas when you do research and you look into the central part, it is known as the mixed kind of a research. So it has a combination of the qualitative and the quantitative part. So we have something as the basic steps in the research process. The step one, it is identifying and develop your research topics. It is the most challenging part of a research assignment here, because you don't want to fail or you don't want to lose anything later on in your in the process of collection the data or doing your analysis. Preliminary search for information, that is basically also known as the literature review. And then we have to locate the materials which you are going to include into your particular study. Then evaluate the process.
Yes, I think we don't have a lot of time. If you can just run fast.
I'll do that, inshallah. Then we need to make some notes over all this. We have to do the write-up of the paper, cite your resources properly, and proofread. That means before submitting it for publication. There are three basic things in a good research. You need to understand that it's how important is it, because when we say the question is a novel question and must be based on a feasible plan study, it involves a systemic planning, time-based realistic objectives, and it should have these are the tools of research, the different tools that I've already talked about, different ways of collecting the research. The most important skill for a good researcher is critical thinking, observation, analysis, assessing issues, problem solving, creativity, and communication. Roles and responsibilities, this is the ethical part of the research, where the researchers have a responsibility to communicate the research, to collaborate, to transfer the society of a whole. The researchers have a responsibility to behave honestly and ethically in the course of the research. There are many issues which comes under this, but lack of time, I won't be able to explain you in much, but this is the basic information that we can have on these things. Then comes the most important, health research is a collaborative process. Each researcher contributes a piece of solving basically a jigsaw puzzle for a disease or a morbidity. Community-based researchers is necessary to remove the various social, cultural, and logical barriers that confound the well-intentioned effort to many public and programs. This is basically for the future of how do you want to conduct your research. It's a thank you from my side for bearing me and listening to me. I'm giving up to Dr. Riaz, my colleague, who would continue the second part of this particular introduction to research, the gateway to research.
So we'll start the next part with Dr. Riaz, inshallah. We will continue the gate to research part 2. Yeah, Dr. Riaz, can you start? For everybody, inshallah, there will be a certification for all attendance. We'll share the link at the end of the presentation, inshallah. These presentations will be recorded and will be sent via.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, Dr. Riaz, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Shakil, for throwing light on the importance of research. I just like to continue writing. So before we go for proposal, write any kind of study, submit a study for funding, to know the time frame, we plan the study. It's basically a plan of action, or we can call it as a blueprint for future activities of research project. So here, there 1 minute. Yeah. So the researcher deals with wants the objectives, methodology he has set in, how much time he needs to complete the project, and what are the findings, what are the details he's looking after in his research. So the other important the advantages are he can evaluate his own work, think over different aspects of research process and find out shortfalls, get suggestions, the guidance, opinions from experts. The most important thing, like I will show you the evaluation form, how the research is project proposal is evaluated in the Word file. Okay, one thing is like after seeing these 2-3 slides, you might be knowing that the most important thing to be planned is a blueprint for how we will proceed. Okay, so what are the aims and objectives? What is the methodology? What is the review literature? These things. But the other thing, most important thing is for funding. You want to apply for funding. So what are the point? The people who are giving funding, they will look into it. Okay, so the researcher can decide the nature of guidance to get from the guide, avoid wastage, assure success, avoid failure, and sometimes the research may be prolonged if you don't plan properly. So here, these are the parts of the proposal: part 1, part 2, part 3. Part 1 contains title, background, need and significance, objectives, definitions, assumptions, hypothesis, limit. Part 3 contains methodology, mainly sampling, population, design, tools of data collection, tools of data analysis. Okay, here in part 1, you just see there, all of you know this: the background, need of significance, objectives, the operational definitions. So for example, I want to do a study on acute tonsillitis. So I will give a definition of tonsillitis. Any child who's having enlarged tonsils plus erythema plus case of acute tonsillitis. This is or otherwise, if suppose I want to define hypertension, any patient who has BP more than 140/90 on 2 occasions. This is a definition. This is the operational definition. Okay. So title page, coming to the first part, title page, we have to write the name, designation, affiliation, and email. And it should reflect the theme of the research. It should be written in a simple and unambiguous language. Sometimes we write very lengthy title. So it will be so many things. To study the prevalence of so and so. In city will write, country will write. Not write everything. And we should not write the short forms. Okay, BMI or body mass index we have to write that way. HDN we write, hypertension, BP we write. We should not write the short forms. We should write the long forms. And any confusing meaning should be avoided. Next comes the introduction part. So we have to give a theoretical background and why we are doing the study. What is the burden of this? What is the burden in particular country, as a country as a whole, in the particular city, in particular area? If we have the previous studies are published. If there's no previous studies are published, you can give the burden in a nearby city or nearby country or nearby WHO area. Okay. Then it should also elaborate. Introduction part should also elaborate the nature of the problem. Explanation of the problem, whether it's more common in females or females, which age group is affected. Okay, a justification, urgency to solve it. Suppose we should ensure that reinventing a wheel. There's a terminology called reinventing a wheel. There's already so many studies published. But just name say we are doing some study, KP study on smoking, KP study on hypertension. So these studies are already done. There's no novel thing. There has to be some kind of new thing to make it like published, to get the funding, to for a kind of approval also. The significance is, and the importance, we have to know the rationale of the study, addressing the context of the problem, bridging the knowledge gaps. Suppose we know that, for example, multiple sclerosis. There's no study in Saudi Arabia till now. Only one study has been done. So it is very good study. Whatever you do, for example, COVID also, when the COVID came, very good study, many studies are published in very good journals, just like presentation of COVID symptoms, symptomatology, like you have just MRI.
Dr. Riyad, you have 3 minutes to finish, inshallah. Become fast. Thank you.
So objectives, we have to clearly define the objectives. Review literature. This demonstrates your knowledge of research problem, as well as demonstrate the understanding of the theoretical and research issues related to your research question. And also it indicates the ability to integrate and synthesize the existing literature. Okay. The methodology part, all of you know, this will be dealt in the detail by later next coming PPTs. There we have like study design, study area, study population, what is the target population, what are the data collection techniques, data processing techniques, data information presentation techniques. So I'll just show you the time and budgeting. This is like we have the chart. This is the Gantt chart. This we need to prepare based on the methodology, like the time plan. And also, I will just show you the.
Your voice is not clear, Dr. Riyad.
Yeah, 1 minute.
Yeah, please.
So for funding, any kind of proposal funding, these are the questions which I look into. There are some 10 questions here, 11 questions here. Each question will be carrying some marks. So if out of 100, this is out of 100. Okay. If you do a study, when you submit the proposal, these are the lines on which it will be evaluated. To what extent the literature review is adequate and comprehensive? This is assigned 10 marks. How convincingly have investigators justified the proposal research? This is 5 marks. To what extent the proposal is authentic and creative? To what extent objectives are clear and likely to be achieved? Does the research design correlate with the district objectives? Methodology, management plan, different stages, or you have prepared the Gantt chart. How the outcome of this proposal contribute to transfer some useful, novel thing has to be there and has to be implementable. Your evaluation, the research quantification will and the relevance to the proposed area of research. And budget, in the time as well as the time and plan, you will also mention the budget, how much of funding you're expecting. In that case, like if you are expecting too much of money, they will reject the proposal. So based on the number of researchers, the duration, it has to be reasonable, and number of people in the research should also be reasonable. It's not like 10 people in one research. So based on these things, the funding is done. More importantly, we can plan the research in a better way. We can define the objectives. We can tell what we're going to do in methodology section, what way we'll do the analysis. The other parts of how to do analysis, what are study designs, the methodology, will be done by Dr. Tohami, the next coming presentation. Thank you. Thank you, Manadol.
Thank you, Dr. Riyad, for your presentation. The question for the first and second part will be postponed after the third part or third presentation.
Assalamu alaikum. Is my voice is clear, please? The screen is clear. Dr. Abdul Malik, assalamu alaikum.
وعليكم السلام دكتور خالد. Yes, Dr. Ahud will present you just a few seconds.
Okay, hello everyone.
Okay, go on, Dr.
So now we have study designs with Dr. Khalid Tohami, Associate Professor, Community Medicine and Public Health Department. You can share your screen and start, Dr. Khalid.
Okay, I am sharing my screen. Is it clear now, please? Is the screen clear? The screen is clear to anyone?
Yes, clear, Dr. Khalid. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I am Dr. Khalid Tohami. Let us share some information and some experience about the study design. Study design is considered as a core or the heart of research. Designed, so it will be a big failure. And for example, if you finished your research and you write a paper, any reviewer first will concentrate on the design of the research. Any contradiction, incorrect, like a fatal mistake. I will give just the basic. I will try to be very precise. Home today with a little bit information, it will be enough. So what we mean by study design, this is the framework, or we can say that it is the set of methods and procedures used to collect and analyze the data of variables. According to what? According to the research problem or the research question. So the research study design are of many types, and the type, how can I use which type of design according to the research question, according to the goals and objectives I want to do, and according to availability of resources, as we will go and see in details according to each design. So since the design of a study can affect the validity of the results, so it is very important to understand limitations. So this is, you can say, a flow chart, or this is a web of what types of design we are meaning. Okay. And this is mainly what is called epidemiological or clinical study designs. Okay. Study designs are of two types. are of two types. Number one, which we call observational, and number two, experimental. So we have observational study and intervention or experimental study. What is the difference between them? In observation, I will not intervene. I will just observe and collect data. Some change in the patient, in the procedure I'm doing, I'm intervene, I'm doing, okay, change. So study design are of two types. Don't forget this. Okay, let us go to observational study designs. Observational are of two types. What we call descriptive, here just I will describe. Or analytical, I will collect my data and analyze this data to reach a conclusion. Intervention having two types, what is called randomized control trials or clinical trials and non-randomized trials. And we will go on in this session, I will know the difference between them. So please be with me. Study design of two types, observational and non-observational or experimental. We know now the difference between them. The observational of two types, descriptive studies and analytical studies, and intervention or experimental of two types, randomized control trials and non-randomized trials. Descriptive study, we have two types, case study and surveys. Analytical, we have four types, what we call correlational, cross-sectional or prevalence studies, case control study, and cohort study. So please, if anyone asks you what are the epidemiological study designs, we tell them we can put this classification in our mind, but mainly they are case studies, surveys, ecological study, cross-sectional studies, case control studies, and cohort study, and randomized control studies and non-randomized control study. This is my home message to you. I will repeat it at the end. If you know these types, now we are okay. Let us go and have some information about each type of them, then it will be clear to us. Observational study, it's nature that it allows nature to take its own course. I am sit and look and observe and have my notes. We measure, but we don't intervene. What we mean by intervention? That giving drug, taking some things, do surgery, put some food elements, nutrients, having some health education, all these are called intervention. I will change in the subject I am studying. But no, in observational, I will do just sit down and observe. This is mainly the observational studies. So observational, we said of two types. The first type is called descriptive. Descriptive, where we use description. It describes the magnitude of the disease load in terms of morbidity and mortality. I will say in this area, we have, for example, in COVID-19, till now in the world, there are more than 100 million cases, and the deaths are, this is description, okay? And this is according to observation. Just we calculate how much they got the disease, how much they died, and from this we got information, and this is called description of the magnitude of the disease. Provide clues to disease etiology. Because I know now, for example, this from COVID-19 usually happened in all people with chronic disease. So this is give me a clue to the reason of the death in COVID. That may be due to old age, may be due to chronic disease. So when I observe and collect data, I can know how much this problem, the magnitude, and then what may be the cause of this problem by observing and collecting data. It provides data for planning. Okay, when I know that, how much disease I have for this area, then I can plan for treatment, I can plan for vaccination, I can plan for health education. So I will know my need for planning. This is an importance or uses of descriptive study. And also it can contribute to research. One of the studies is case study. What is the case study? Case study is describe in depth the characteristic of one limited number of cases or one case. For example, if a physician, he saw a very rare case in the hospital having very rare disease, so he can describe this disease in depth, and this is considered as a design. It's a case study, okay? We can have 2-3 case study, you can call it case series according to the number. So case study is considered as a descriptive observational research. Case study may be a patient, maybe a health center, maybe a village. It can provide useful insight into the problem, common in clinical medicine. Usually we found it common in clinical medicine. Then we have the second type of descriptive observational, the surveys. We call it al-musuhat, the surveys, right? We use it to collect information on demographic characteristics like age, sex, or gender, education, to study characteristics on health-related variables like incidence rate, to study attitude, opinions, and beliefs. Surveys answer the following question: when the disease occurring, which is called time distribution. Also, it can answer place distribution or person distribution. For example, if I have a new, we got a new disease like COVID, first we describe it after a survey. We said that this is a new disease. It affects Chinese people in Wuhan market of fish or market of animals. And it was been in the time between this and this. So it was time distribution, place distribution in Wuhan, and person at the start in Chinese. So this is considered as a time, place, and person distribution of a disease and will be used after surveys. The second category of observational is analytical study. And analytical, usually we analyze the relationship between the health status and other variables. And then you see, usually in descriptive study, we can put a hypothesis. For example, when they discovered this COVID-19, they said that this is maybe a virus, and maybe came from bats. So we generate a hypothesis. قدرنا نعمل لنا فرضية about the clue. I can test this hypothesis during doing analytical study. So we can test our hypothesis, and it can be a phase after doing descriptive study. Then if you want to be sure, we will do analytical study. If you want to be sure more, we can go to experimental study. So interested in individuals and inference is to the population. Usually I study individuals, but when I have my results, I can reflect these results to the population. Analytical study, we said that we have 4 types: ecological study, cross-sectional study, case control study, and cohort study. We will go quickly through ecological study. This is usually, we will find association between, we have a good example sometimes, and also ecological study, usually the data is there and it's published. Yeah, and I will go to publish data. I will find in this year, I have, for example, increased sale of asthma drugs. And then I found in another study that there is increased mortality or increased morbidity from asthma. So I will bring these 2 research, I will bring these 2 data and make a correlation or make, so it is called the correlational study. So often the information about disease and exposure is already there, and then it is considered this type of research is easy. It is don't do any expenses, too much expenses, because the data is already collected. I just make correlation between this data in published materials. Number 2, we have cross-sectional study, which is called prevalence study. And most of our studies now we are doing in our life now in epidemiological study for our students, for us, which we call cross-sectional or prevalence study, when we want to how much this disease is prevalent and what are other factors in this disease. So it is called prevalence study. So it calculates prevalence rate, and it will show the relationship between the disease and other variables. For example, this disease, in which age, in which gender, in which economic status, in which characteristic. This is what we call prevalence or cross-sectional study. Number 3 is case control study, and these are comparison study. And this is to determine whether or not statistical association exists, and how much this, if there is association, how much the strength of association. It is called case control study. Case control, this is the graph, is what I will do. It's called also retrospective. And why? I will start with people with disease. For example, I want to know the relation between smoking and cancer lung. So I will go to the population. I will collect patient with cancer lung. Okay, and I will take control that people with the same age, with the same gender, without disease. Then I will come and ask, I want to know if the smoking affecting them or not. I will ask the cases, are you smoking or not? Are you smoking or not a smoker? And I will ask the control. So from the population, I will select my cases, my controls. Cases, that means patient with cancer lung. Then I will ask them, are you exposed to smoking? If yes, are you exposed? No. Then the controls. I will ask about the exposure. Usually from this analysis, I can get two rates, what we call the exposure rate and then the odd ratio. From this exposure rate and odd ratio, I can know if there is association between smoking or cancer lung or no, and how much this association, how much the strength of this relation. It needs a lot of details, but I want you to know the basic. That we have something called case control. It is considered as analytical observational study, and I will collect data. I will ask about the history Okay, and I will analyze by 2 exposure rate and odds ratio. Okay, I am using what we call the basic design. It is called 2x2 or contingency table to have my results, my collected data. For example, in the cases, if there is a smoker and have the disease, it's considered A. They are a smoker having the disease but not a smoker, they are C. Those who don't have the disease, they are B and smoking, and those don't have the disease and not smoking are D. And from this table, I will do the analysis. From that, I can say that if the frequency of the risk factor or of smoking is higher, okay, in cases than in controls, I said that there is an association. يعني لو نسبة المدخنين اللي مرضى واللي عندهم تدخين أكثر من غير المرضى, and I will consider this is association. Last type of analytical observational is called cohort study. A cohort study, it is like a mirror image, axial case control. Here I will start with the exposure and I will follow the patient till I will reach the disease. So cohort is type of analytical study. What are its features? Its cohort is identified before appearance of a disease, and I will go and follow smoker people. I will find the smoker people and I will try to follow them. Okay, then I will have controls. So I will start with people without the disease, then people, smoker and non-smoker, or can say exposed and not exposed, and I will follow them, maybe for 1 year, for 6 years, for 10 years. Then those who are getting the disease, I will count them, those with no disease, also in the controls, having disease, no disease. So it is called prospective study. Axial case control called retrospective studies. The framework is the same table, like that one. So we have exposed, okay, to a factor, and then not exposed. Exposed and get the disease is A, exposed not having the disease B, not exposed to the factor and got the disease C, and they are not exposed and not having the disease is D. And after the end, we can calculate what's called incidence rate. Very important, that cohort, okay, usually it calculates the incidence rate. From that, I can do what is estimation of what is called relative risk or what is called attributable risk. I just now want, because this is basic, just to know these names. If you are interested later, then you can study, you can have more knowledge, or you can have more webinars like this and to explain in details. So let us have some, not to forget, in case control, I will have my analysis with exposure rate and odds ratio. In cohort, I will get incidence rate, relative risk, and attributable risk. Okay, then we will go, last item is experimental study. It is 2 types, randomized control trials and non-randomized. What I mean by randomization, that the doctors or people, they allocate, and I will bring, for example, a population, for example, a hypertensive patient. I want to test new drug for hypertension. So I bring hypertensive patient, I will put them in 2 groups. Randomly, no one will know who is having the treatment, who is having placebo. Then I will give the first group the drug that I want to test. The second group, I will give them placebo. Then I will collect my data and then do the comparison between 2. So for this reason, it's called randomized. So this randomized include intervention that because I will give drug. Then I have to have a control group. Then no one will know who, and the patient will not be, if he is taking a true drug or no. So it is randomization. So there is 3 criteria to call this design a randomized control trial.
Dr. Khalid, in 2 minutes.
Okay. Then I will do manipulation. I will follow them, and I will do randomization. Randomization ensures that the investigator has no control over the allocation of participants. And randomization is best done by using statistical random. Non-randomized control trials, I will lose one of the 3. Okay, at least one of the characteristics will not be there. And if I don't have control group, or if I did not do randomization, this is called non-randomized. And it have another name, which is called quasi-experimental study design. Okay, this is home message. Take this home. Study design of 2 types, observational and experimental. Observational of 2 types, descriptive and analytical. Experimental of 2 types, randomized and non-randomized. Descriptive studies, case studies and surveys. Analytical, correlational, prevalence studies, case control, and cohort study. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Khalid, for your presentation. Now we'll give 5 to 10 minutes for a question. Anybody want to ask, just raise his hand. So we'll unmute him. So we'll have just 5 to 10 minutes for a question if anybody has a question.
And now we go to next presentation with Dr. Waqas Sami, Biostatistic and Data Collection and Data Analysis, Assistant Professor.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon to all the respected participants. Thank you so much to Dr. Khalid Tuhami, the full compendiums of basic research, what they have just shared with all of us. So basically, I'm going to start about the very basic question and that of the data analysis. Obviously, this whole is a very, very broad topic, but still after today's presentation or after the session, you would be able to go through all these, yourself once after taking this small knowledge that what is basically this subject is, what are the primary data, and what are the small descriptive and inferential biostatistical tests that we generally use. But it's still a very basic one, advanced statistical analysis parts. So let's start. What is biostatistics? This is the word we generally hear that, okay, what this subject is basically about. That includes procedures and techniques. For example, you are going to conduct a prevalence study. You want to see the prevalence of type 2 diabetes mellitus, big one. So this subject will help you in defining the procedures and techniques used to process and analyze numerical biological data. Now the procedures and techniques, what would be the study design? Will it be through a questionnaire? How many participants will be there? That is the sample size determination. What sampling technique you would be using to collect the data from the patients? And then based on that, this subject will help you to make inferences. What is the prevalence in males and females? What is the total prevalence? Is there any difference or is there any association between the prevalence of type 2 diabetes in males and females? And then based on all these, we will reach to the decision. And sometimes we don't have the data and we have to extrapolate the information through the modeling techniques that we call in the face of uncertainty. So basically from the word go, once you have the title in your hand, then you prepare the protocol, in which the methodology is the most important part, because based on that, you are going, everything is written inside the methodology. Then the data management comes, how you're going to the collected data, how you're going to enter it, how you're going to manage it. Then study implementation, monitoring of the study, its analysis, and it goes till the publication part. So basically from the word go till the publication, every subject has an importance, so as do the biostatistics has. It assists in summarizing a larger set of data in a form that is easily understandable. Now, for example, 127 participants are right now online. So just by using a simple average, I would see that, okay, how many males and how many females are attending this webinar? What is the average age of the males and females who are attending this webinar? So out of just the figure of 127 will be summarized in just one figure. It assists in drawing general conclusions and making predictions of how much of a thing will happen under given conditions. A patient is diabetic, is hypertensive, is having dyslipidemia. What is the probability or what are the chances that in the coming 5 years, he or she will develop heart disease? And these techniques are so powerful that in almost every branch of health sciences, that includes clinical, non-clinical, dental sciences, allied health sciences, epidemiology, genetics, meta-analysis, clinical trials, it's there. It's there to help you, to assist you in journalizing your results, in analyzing your data. Broadly, this subject is divided into two parts, descriptive and inferential. Descriptive biostatistics is the area in which you explore your results. That's why it is the synonym of descriptive biostatistics. You have to understand your data. So descriptive biostatistics gives you about some of the most important aspects of the data. They summarize your data into frequencies, percentages. They simplify the data, organize the data. You can prepare graphs. You can give the information of the averages. What is the median BMI of type 2 diabetics? What is the mean age of the patients? This is all descriptive. It means you are going to summarize your data. Now, the next one is the inferential part. Here, whenever we are conducting a research, we always prepare a hypothesis. And based on that, we take our research forward. So if your hypothesis is smoking causes lung cancer, so is there any association between smoking and lung cancer? Another hypothesis you are going to test, is there any difference in the cholesterol levels of males and females? or you have prepared a hypothesis that the BMI of type 2 diabetics will be higher than that of the controls. So these are all the hypotheses. And to work on the inferential statistics part, we always select a sample from the population. We never study the whole population. If we have to study the whole population, then why there is a need of a sample? It's a very easy example to understand, which I'm going to tell you. If we want to test the CBC of a patient, do we take the whole blood, take out the whole blood from the patient and then say, okay, I mean, the blood levels are all normal. We just take 5 cc or 10 cc of the blood in the syringe and give it for the testing, because that's the blood that is running inside the human body. So this is the beauty of sampling. We never study the whole population, but we say that the sample must be representative of that population to generalize the results. To understand all this, you need to understand the variables first, because in biostatistics or in statistics, all depends upon the nature of variables. All the analysis depends upon the nature of the variables. So broadly, the variables are divided into two types, qualitative and quantitative. The qualitative variables are those which are non-numerical characteristics that does not contain any quantity, like education. Education has categories. You can categorize the education: illiterate, secondary, undergraduate, postgraduate. Gender can be a male or a female. Marital status can have a married, single, widow. Severity of a disease can be mild, moderate, or severe. So in qualitative variables, all of the variables will be having categories. Whereas in quantitative variables, all the recording against the variable will be numbers, metric numbers, quantities, actual age of the patient, 34 years, 35 years, 45 years, 50 years, weight, height 160 centimeter, 155 centimeter, BMI 25.4. If you take BMI into qualitative variable, it can also go like BMI of less than 18.5, you can categorize as normal or underweight. 18 to 24.5, you would say it is normal. 25 to 27.5, you would say it is overweight. And then the criteria next to it, it is obese. So quantity is HbA1c levels. You can take 4.5, 5.5%, 6.9, 7.5, triglyceride levels. All these numbers, these are all numbers. So that's why they are called quantitative variables. Now let's see the further division of qualitative and quantitative variables. Qualitative variables are further divided into two categories, nominal and ordinal. And quantitative variables are divided into two subcategories, discrete and continuous. So let's see first nominal variables. So they are qualitative variables, but in this, there is no ordering. Ordering is not essential. Like, where do you live in Riyadh? So Malaz, Suleimania, Al-Mata, or any other area. It doesn't mean that Malaz will always take the first place, Suleimania second, and Al-Matar second. Gender is qualitative because it has two categories, males and females, but there is no ordering in it. Males can come first, females can come first. Marital status, it's not that single always will be given a code 1, divorce, single, these are all interchangeable. It doesn't matter that the marital status must follow this sequence. Blood group, surgical outcome, dead or alive, color of the eye, black, brown, hazel. So these are nominal variables, which comes under the auspices of qualitative variables. And in these variables, there is no ordering. Whereas in ordinal variables, ordering has a meaning. A hierarchy has a meaning. Severity of a pain. It starts from mild, it went to moderate, and then severe. Performance of the student, it was excellent, it was good, which we are aware of this one. It starts with strongly agree, then agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. Grades of a cancer, 1, 2, 3, 4, and satisfaction level. So what is the difference between nominal and ordinal? Both will be having categories, but in nominal, there will be no meaningful order. In ordinal, as the name implies, the categories will have a meaningful order. So we are done with this one, and this one. Quantitative, we know what is it, but quantitative is further divided into discrete and continuous. What is discrete? It is a quantitative measure, but in this variable, all of the fractions or decimal, they never include, like number of births. Number of births can have a whole number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Number of births cannot be 1.25, 1.75, 2.25. Number of deaths in an accident, it can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We would not conclude something that the number of deaths today were 27.21. Number of rooms in a house, they will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but cannot be in fractions. Nobody would say I have 2.75 rooms in my house. Number of patients admitted. So these are discrete variables, but they don't include fractions or decimals. On the other side, the continuous variables, they include each and every metric numbers that is possible. Height height can be 165.27 centimeter, weight can be 84.75 kg, BMI can be 25.21, age can be 37.3 months, skull circumference, monthly income, number of days in a week, months, temperature, distance, hour spent during exercise. So these are all continuous variables. Types of data. Now, whenever we go into the field and we talk about the collection of the data, it is classified into two types: primary data and secondary data. Primary data is the one that the investigator has collected himself, or the data reached to him, but has not undergone any statistical treatment. It means no graphs has been prepared, only the entry has been done, no analysis has been conducted. Whereas the secondary data, it means that someone else has collected the data for you and it has undergone a statistical treatment. So let's see first, what are the sources of collection of primary data? Direct personal investigation, the first one. In this method, the investigator study on the prevalence of type 2 diabetes mellitus, I myself going into the field with the questionnaire and contacting the patients and getting the data from them. That is direct personal investigation, in which the principal investigator is collecting the data directly from the respondents. Either it can be a patient, it can be a student, it can be a person, whatever it be. Then we have indirect investigation. So sometimes the direct sources do not exist, or the informants, they hesitate to respond. Like if there is a research on a females and there is a male respondent, so there might be a hesitation, or there are some questions that male respondents cannot ask directly to the female respondents. So in such case, it will be an indirect investigation. Maybe the brother, father, husband, the people, the investigator is collecting the data as a third person, asking the information about the respondent through questionnaires. So through questionnaires is still one of an excellent method of collecting the data. But as you know, we are in the area of COVID, so it's really very difficult to conduct the questionnaire-based researches these days. But the benefit of the questionnaire is that you have the record, but there are other limitations also. For each one of the primary data collections, there are always limitations and pluses, pros and cons for each method are always there. Your questionnaire should be very brief, simple. There is, we can have a separate webinar on how to formulate the questions in a questionnaire. So this is, it was before 2 years, I would say that one of the best methods to collect the data through questionnaires. Through internet, the very much used these days, the Google form.
You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So through internet means that we're going to collect the data through the Google Forms. Now, in this era, we ourselves have used so many Google Forms to collect the data, and it's going wonderful. But one of the major drawback that I experienced using the Google Form is that if you have a research in which a scale is there for scoring, depression, anxiety, and others, so all of these are scoring scales, 0, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and something. So once you transfer the data from the Google Form to the Excel, it gives you just the responses. So then you have to work again to transform all those scores into analyzable form. Through telephone, if you have a patient, you want a 6 months follow-up, you call him or her, get the data. It's one of the most easiest methods. Through investigators, collect the data for yourself. So it can be through the investigators. Secondary data, as I told you the definition, that someone else has collected for you, or you take the data from any of these sources: government organizations, research organizations, from hospitals, teaching institutions, journals, newspapers, online data. From hospital, you ask for the COVID data. From teaching institutions, you want to study something related to the GP of the student, so you can contact the registration department. Research organizations in Riyadh, we have many, they have given the publicly available data also. So these are all the secondary data that you have not collected yourself, or someone else has collected and it has undergone a statistical treatment. Either you prepared a graph or something. Now, this is the last part, data analysis. Analysis depends upon the nature of the variables and the type of analysis you want to have. For descriptive part, for a qualitative variable, you can just present the frequencies, percentages, and graphs for qualitative. Now, if you want to calculate the mean of a gender, can you say that on the average, it was 1.5 average of the mean you calculated for the gender? You cannot interpret it. So for the presentation of qualitative data, your data must be in frequencies, percentages, and graph. Graph can be a bar chart or a pie chart or other related data to the qualitative analysis. In descriptive, quantitative data can be expressed into hours, the mean number of hours spent during the study. You can calculate a mean, median, mode, the central tendencies, the measures of dispersion, standard deviation, standard error, interquartile ranges, quartiles. So many things can be calculated for the quantitative data. And for hundreds and I would say thousands of statistical tests available that can be applied on your data. But always remember that data is analyzed based on the objectives. There are thousands of statistical tests available, but not all of them can be applied on your data. If your study is prevalence, then a separate analysis will be conducted. If you are going to compare a group with a quantitative variable, it will be another analysis. If you want to see the relationship of one quantitative parameter with the rest of independent variables, it may be a regression analysis. If you want to associate two quantitative variables, it can be a correlation analysis. So remember, it always depends upon the nature of your variable, the data analysis itself, and the objectives of the study. We don't have to apply everything we know in our research. We have to stick to the objectives. That's why it is said, that's why the earlier presenters have given much importance to how to formulate the objectives, how to prepare the components of the research, how to formulate the questions. So these are very important things you need to understand. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Abdul Malik, for giving me the opportunity to share a very basic and novice experience of mine with the presenters.
So now we will talk about how to apply for ethical approval. It will be conducted by Dr. As-Sadiq Yusuf. He is Assistant Professor on Community Medicine and Public Health Department, College of Medicine, Majmaah.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, Is it clear, Dr. Abdul Malik? Is it clear?
Yes, Doctor. Yeah, but you did not share the screen. Still, your sound is clear, but you did not share the screen.
Share screen. Is it okay?
Yes, okay, go on.
Okay, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I'm going just to give you a brief idea about how to apply for ethics approval in Majmaah University. And when you want to, you cannot actually work having any research without having an ethics approval. This is very important. This is an ethical issue. Everybody should be in line with this. So the requirements to obtain this ethics approval, we have got 5 documents needed. Number 1 is a proposal in the format. 2 is the IRB form. IRB stands for Institutional Review Board. This is a committee giving these forms and also giving the ethics approval. And number 3 is a consent form. Number 4 is a tool of data collection, the CV. All these 5 documents, they are sent to the IRB at MUED through email. And then you are going to receive your ethics approval also at your email. So we start with the proposal format. I think many people must pass through this. This is the first page of the application for research project grant to Basic Health Research Center. You have the research title, name of the principal investigator. This is the first one, the PI and the department, the college, the mobiles, official emails, and duration of the study. This is the first page. Then you have the abstract. When we say abstract, we mean abstract regarding the proposal. That means it includes the introduction and the objectives and the research methods. And this abstract should not be more than 200 words, between 150 and 200 words. We are going to some research methods. And this also, if you have got many other researchers, you can put their names here in this page. And also the other one is the research problem and motivation. Research problem and motivation in our form stands for the introduction, which includes the background of the study and the problem statement, that means description of the problem, and the rationale of the study, the justification of the study. And all this data comes from your reading. So some people are confused with the research problem and motivation. This is the introduction. And then you got the research objectives. You have got actually the research, the general objective, one big statement, usually resemble the title of the study. And you have the specific objectives, maybe 3, maybe 4. And then you have the teacher review. Maybe half a page or something, you have to read more. And also you have to write about this, about your topic, and be in line with the research questions and research objectives. And don't write the teacher which is very far from your study. In some authorities, they don't have the teacher review. The teachers they put it in the introduction. But in our case here in this university, we have a teacher review part of our proposal. And then the research methodology or research methods, as has been explained, you have to write about the study design, the study population, the study area, sampling. You may write about the type of sampling, the technique, and the size, and also you may ask also in sometimes the frame. And then data collection, you write about the variables, the tools of data collection, the technique, how are you going to collect data, and data analysis, and the ethics issues. The most important two parts of the ethics issues are the ethics approval and the consent. And then you write your references in the reference list. This when the research is funded, there is some compensation for the researchers and for the lab equipment and these things. Sometimes they are not important if you have got an unfunded research. And these the work plan or the schedule. You put all the activities you have. For example, the ethics approval, the pre-testing, and then data collection, and then data analysis and report writing. And this could be in line with the number of months you say that the duration of your study in the first page. And we go number 2 to the IRB form, which is the ethics form itself. That one is a proposal only. And this number 2 is the IRB form. You are asked to write the names of the investigator in Arabic. Some people, they miss to write their names in Arabic. This is a common mistake. Then the email, the phone, the nationality, the status, whether you are faculty, student, department, and the title of the study in Arabic also required. Very important. Some people, they forget to write the study in Arabic and the title in Arabic, and this you have to translate. Even if you use Google Translation, then you have to adjust it to be a very smart and adequate and a good type of translation. And this square, if the PI is student, then you provide the name of the advisor and the email of the advisor and the department. Still in the IRB form, estimated beginning and date and the end date of the study, and type of the project. Is it a faculty research? Is it a dissertation? Is it a pilot study, and so on? Type of research again, is it medical? Is it clinical trial? Is it observational, and so on? Is your research from where and an amount of money and duration? Then still we are in the IRB form, the time commitment for participants. This is a common mistake occurs here. The time commitment means the time you are taking to with the respondent, for example, 5 minutes or 10 minutes. The time you are doing the questionnaire or you are doing the examination and the questionnaire and these things. So this is not the time commitment for the whole study. Some people, they write 3 months and 4 months, and this is not right. Then site and location of the study, potential risk, and if there is some risk to the patients, some studies, especially the intervention studies, there are some risks. So you have to write these potential risks, and please provide a list of researchers. If you have got many researchers, you have to list their names here. And then also again, you write the methodology, the purpose of the study, that means the objectives, participant information, description of the participants, who are they, their number, their size, their age, their gender, and also participant recruitment process. How are you going to recruit these participants? Is this through online questionnaire? Is this through WhatsApp? Is this through emails, direct contact, or what? These are very important to be written here. And these are signatures of the principal investigator, the PI. And if you have got an advisor in some especially for students, should sign and write the date, and the department chair. And the head of the department also is important to sign. This is very important. Some people, they miss the signature of the chair. This is the end of this IRB form. Then we move to the third one, which is a consent form. Consent form usually is related to the participant, not to the researcher mainly. So this is an advanced one. In the past, we have got one written in Arabic, but now it's written in both languages, Arabic and English. You have to write both Arabic and English parts. You write the title of the research. You write the name of the principal investigator, his email and his phone. And if there is an advisor, you have to write the advisor name, email, and phone. And explanation of the purpose of the research, that means the objectives of the research. And then the description of the procedure. How are you going to go on this research? How are you going to collect data, analyze data, and these things? And also you have to write about the potential risk. This is very important. Are the subjects subjected to a risk or not? And you should be very transparent. And if these subjects might be subject to risk, you have to mention this. And also you have to mention how are you going to deal with this risk. For example, false, for example, trauma, infection, whatever. And if there is a risk, potential risk, you have to mention it. And you have also to write how are you going to deal with this risk, because these are the rights of the respondents. Some people, they have got some intervention studies in which patients or persons might be affected. They just ignore this part, but this part is very important. And then the participants and benefits. And are the participants have got some benefits or not? Generally, here we don't give money, for example, to the participants, but we can write that there is no direct benefit for the participants, but the community might be might have some benefits regarding so and so, raising awareness, changing policy, new treatment, and these things. And you can write about the indirect benefits for the respondents. Research questions regarding the study. This is very important, also a common mistake. And you write about, you say to the participant, if you have got any question or query regarding this proposal or this research, you can refer back to the principal investigator, and this is contact. Some people, they write the research questions. Here we don't mean the research questions. We mean the questions that come in the heads of the participants at any stage of the research. So just ask them if you have got any query, any question, you can refer back to the investigator to be resolved, to these questions to be answered. And then you have to write signature of the participant. It's not signature of the author or of the principal investigator. This signature, you leave it blank. You leave it blank because this is an area. You leave it blank because this should be signed by the participant if you are having an informed consent written code. Sometimes written, sometimes oral. But this area should be left blank because it should be signed, if any, by the participant. So some authors, they just put their signature here, which should write. And this is, and then you write your email and your address so that these participants can come across you and they can ask you questions so that you can resolve these questions for them. Then number 4, you have to write the tool of data collection. This tool might be a questionnaire, might be a data sheet in which there is questions, there is examination, investigation, so on, or maybe a checklist, maybe a guideline according to your study. So this tool of data collection also should be put as as a requirement for having approval for research ethics approval. It's very important to use this tool, and sometimes they concentrate on these tools, and also try to avoid sensitive questions and don't ask unnecessary questions which are sensitive to the community. This is also a problem that faces some researchers. And then you put your CV. The CV, only one CV of the principal investigator. If you have got many investigators, so the PI, the principal investigator, should put his CV, maybe a short one, maybe a short CV. So these are the 5 requirements to have the ethics approval from Majmaah University. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sadiq Youssef, and thank you everybody for attendance, and also will appreciate Dr. Rashid Barada. He is the Dean of College of Medicine, Majmaah University, and Vice Dean of the Scientific Department, Dr. Haydar Anizi, for supporting this presentation and course for today. Thank you everybody for attendance. We'll open a question now for 5 to 10 minutes for closure. Before closure, please. Anybody who want to ask, just raise hand and ask, please. Second issue, I send already link for registration. Who want to send certification for attendance, you can just fill the information, and the certification will be back to you via your email. الله يعطيكم العافية. هو wrote request for certification. إذا تكرموا ممكن بس تعطونا suggestion and something about this course to motivate us to do it again and again, inshallah. So please write everything, what the advantage, the disadvantage of this. You can just say presentation or small course. Any comment from the presenter, Dr. Khalid Tuhami, Dr. Sadiq, and Dr. Shaki, and Dr. Riyad, Dr. Waqas? If somebody wants to talk or say something before closure.
No, thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. I would like to have some comments for the participants. If they need second step for this workshop, we are very eager to do it. You can do it even during vacation or after Ramadan or after Eid. Just let us hear from them. If they like to go to step 2, we can do it. Thank you very much, and for your attendance and for your cooperation.
So we'll just give you some 1 to 2 minutes. If somebody want to ask, then we'll close the session. So if you have some suggestion, you can write in the link what I sent to you. So we take the benefit and we'll work on it, inshallah. There is one question for from Dr. Sausan, I think.
لا unmute أنا muted كده.
Yeah, Dr. Sausan, yes.
السلام عليكم. السلام عليكم دكتور عبد الملك. Thanks for the presenters for their good presentations. I don't want to ask, but just I wanted to raise that this is a very good opportunity for all members of the University of Majmaah to attend such events, and I think it should be done again with longer time and detailed presentations. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Sausan, for your opinion. Inshallah, we'll work together, inshallah, next time. And also, I appreciate the effort in the community medicine department for supporting this course today. For everybody. So, any question before closing the session? Yeah, I think we don't have any question now. The link I sent to all body in the chat. So thank you for your attendance and thank you for who present with us today. All doctor. Thank you for all. Have a good night, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.